The word hit us like you're hit with a bullet.
The stories we do now are in a different category. We're actually trying to discover things. It's some kind of weird collision between science and philosophy, music and interviews and drama. That's part of the beauty of Radiolab, is that it somehow creates all of these different fascinating problems and challenges. Now, in Owen's case, he had these movies. He could play them again and again and again.
And we wondered, why would that be? And why and how could a Disney movie help Owen with his autism?
Nobody would set out to make a show like Radiolab. Like that, whose plan would be, let's make this really production-intensive audio program. It grew up really organically because we felt like there was a need for it and it was what we wanted to make. There's about 1.5 million listeners a week on the radio, and then there's also the podcast audience, where we are frequently in the top 10 of iTunes podcasts. I think part of why it sounds different than everything else on the radio is that Jad is a composer, and the musical sensibility of the show is just part of its DNA.
We don't do live.
Have you guys ever talked to each other?
I don't think so, no.
Oh, this is Jad Abumrad.
Well, hi.
This is Jim Glick.
Hey, how are you?
Fine, how are you?
Pretty good, pretty good. Telling stories is a deeply musical act no matter what. It's pitches, contours of sounds, rhythm. A lot of it is trying to get the textures and the ingredients to behave the way you want them to, which I imagine is like a chef's problem. You know, you're constantly, like the way they poke at meat to figure out if it's done, you're constantly doing that with the sound. Like you're putting stuff in, saying, does it feel big enough? It feels thick enough?
There's a real art to being able to tell a storyline and have music sort of bubble underneath the surface and always propping up the story, always propping up the characters that are in it.
Music becomes a metaphor for me. It becomes a way of translating some of these ideas. We did a show about colors. You can't even really see colors on the radio. What does a mantis shrimp see when it looks at the rainbow? There's no way to answer that question without seeing it. 3, 2, 1.
Ultraviolet, really ultraviolet, super duper ultraviolet.
We used a variety of musical metaphors, and we orchestrated a whole choir with different bands of the visual spectrum. Each cluster of voices represented one band.
Insanely red.
3, 2, 1.
Orange.
I really hope this works.
I mean, after all, he's taken 3 different things. He's taken 2
We just
things.
learned that there are creatures out there who can see colors that we can't even imagine.
Robert's like a living cartoon character. He can generate all these crazy voices in his head, and he's a great improviser. Jad's a composer, so when we all came together and Jad and Robert for the first time made something, it was like Jad was able to take the voices that were inside Robert's head and recontextualize them in a way that sounded surreal and something new and different. When we look for a new story in our editorial meeting, we're looking for, does it hit all of these different sectors? Can it take you to a specific place? Can it create specific images in your mind? And is there some kind of big idea? We love stories where you're left wondering, how do I feel about this?
People sometimes tell me it's a very visual show. That's part of like the connection of listening, is that, like, you're seeing things and you can't help but see things. That's half the battle, you know, is about making those images come alive, which is weird because you're working in radio. You know, there are no pictures here. But in some weird, more cosmic way, I feel like the lack creates this vacuum that then 2 people have to fill. You, the storyteller, and the person listening. And there's something deeply empathic about that like we're doing it together.
You're listening to Radiolab.